Hey, what's going on, guys? From Gaming here, back into the video. Today's episode, we'll be taking a quick look at Frost Mage for Season 3 of The War Within. One thing to note is that this is going to strictly just be a beginner's guide. This is not something that's super advanced. This is going to be for people who are just now getting in the Frost Mage for the first time. You should be able to take these details and at least get up to a 10 key. Okay, let's talk a little bit about some of the core of Frost Mage in Season 3. So right now we are running Frostfire over Spellslinger, and Frostfire is a little bit unique because if we hover over here over Frostfire Mastery, you can see that you are juggling these different stacks between Fire Mastery and Frost Mastery. So one will increase your haste, that's going to be Fire Mastery, and then one will increase your Mastery, and that's going to be Frost Mastery. What is unique about Frostfire is you are getting Frostfire Bolt. This will replace your Frost Bolt, and one thing that's kind of unique to this is this will apply a damage over time effect. And this will also generate stacks of your mastery, your Frostfire Mastery. Then down here at the very bottom, we have our Flash Freeze Burn. So Frostfire Empowerment grants you max benefit of Frostfire Mastery, refreshes its duration, and grants excess frost and excess fire. And casting either Combustion or Icy Veins is going to grant, in our case, it'll be Icy Veins, your Frostfire Empowerment. So what is Frostfire Empowerment? It's going to be directly above here. So your Frost and Fire spells have a chance to activate Frostfire Empowerment, causing your next Frostfire Bolt to be instant cast, does 60% increased damage and explode for 80% of its damage to nearby enemies. So this is a proc that we'll have to react to. Now, if we go back to earlier, during our Flash Freeze Burn, we notice that we get excess frost, excess fire. So that's just going to be this node here, excess frost. And then on the right-hand side, it's going to be excess fire. So whenever we do get that instant cast proc of our Frostfire Bolt, we're getting excess fire and excess frost procs. So basically, Frostfire sort of has this built-in proc-based system that you kind of weave in like fire and frost spells to, and it also replaces your Frostfire Bolt or your Frost Bolt with Frostfire Bolt. And it's kind of balancing. It's sort of like a balancing act between frost and fire. So excess frost, consuming excess fire causes your next flurry to also cast Ice Nova, 150% effectiveness. Ice Novas cast this way do not freeze enemies in place. And then when you consume excess frost, the cooldown of your Comet Storm is reduced by 3 seconds. Then excess fire casting Comet Storm causes your next Ice Lance to explode into a Frostfire Burst, dealing a whole bunch of damage. Frostfire Burst has a 50% chance to grant Brain Freeze. So they both just have different benefits, different things that they can proc. So this is just something to kind of be aware of. So you might have to go back and watch that section. It probably would have been best if I actually talked about what our our base spells are before we even discuss that. But I just wanted to cover that we are running Frostfire at the moment and not Spellslinger, and just kind of what that involved. So let's go ahead and talk about some of our core spells. So Frostfire Bolt, we did talk about that. That replaces our Frost Bolt. So Frostfire Bolt is going to be kind of unique in itself. So you can see as we cast it, it's generating these things called icicles. So icicles are something that we use on more powerful abilities. We'll talk about that here in a minute. But I want to talk about what we just kind of discussed with that excess fire and frost. You can see, or excuse me, with Fire Mastery and Frost Mastery. So you can see as we cast this spell, we're getting stacks of Frost Mastery. We're getting stacks of Fire Mastery. And you notice that they did cap at 6 stacks. Now, one thing that's unique about Frostfire Bolt is it counts as both a fire and a frost spell. So that's why it's granting both, right? So if we come in here and let's just say we cast our Glacial Spike, you'll notice that we're only getting stacks of our Frost Mastery there. So we're actually getting stacks of Fire Mastery too due to Frostfire Infusion. You have a chance to get stacks from both spells regardless of the spell type being cast. So just to kind of get you familiar with how you actually generate those Frost and Fire Mastery stacks. Up next, we have our Frozen Orb. Frozen Orb is going to be extremely core to your kit. So we can throw out an orb just to kind of show you. And it starts to, it is this sort of AOE ground effect. And you can see it procced this little widget here. And that is going to be our Fingers of Frost. So your next Ice Lance is going to deal damage as if a target was frozen. So what that means is essentially that your spells hit harder against a frozen target. So if I come up here, right, and I Frost Nova this training dummy, and then I Ice Lance it, I did more damage with my Ice Lance than if I were to just Ice Lance by itself. So I Ice Lance by itself, it's 150,000. If I Frost Nova then Ice Lance, it's nearly 1 million. And the reason for that is due to something called Shatter. And Shatter is very important to understand as a Frost Mage. So let's just read this out. Multiplies the critical strike chance of your spells against frozen targets by 1.5 and adds an additional 50% critical strike chance. So we'll talk more about the shatter combo in a minute, but just know that you can freeze specific targets and deal a whole bunch more damage and pretty much guarantee a critical strike against anything that's a frozen target. So frozen orb, we talked about, right? We throw it out and it procs something called Fingers of Frost. Let's go ahead and talk about that now. So Fingers of Frost is going to be right here. So the reason that our Ice Lance did so much damage is not necessarily just because of Shatter. It also did a lot of damage due to Fingers of Frost. So this is another proc that you kind of have to play around. And Frostbolt has a 50% chance, and Frozen Orb damage has a 5% chance to grant a charge of Fingers of Frost. So that orb that we put out procced Fingers of Frost. Just to show you that one more time, we'll throw out an orb here. Here is that Fingers of Frost proc, excuse me. So what does this do? Fingers of Frost causes your next Ice Lance to deal damage as if the target were frozen. So Fingers of Frost is going to make your Ice Lance basically be a guaranteed critical strike, and it's also going to do a ton more damage due to Shatter here. So we'll dive into that a little bit more in a bit, just kind of know what that is. We also have our Comet Storm as well. So just press this, and a whole bunch of sort of icicles and comets will come down from the sky. And you can see it also brought down a meteor. So it does meteor as well due to our Frostfire tree. There's a talent node for that. So that is a whole bunch of damage. And we also have our Cone of Cold as well. So Cone of Cold kind of looks like this. And it doesn't do that much damage by itself. However, due to Coldest Snap down here in the very bottom of your tree, Cone of Cold is actually pretty core to our tree. So Cone of Cold's cooldown is increased to 45 seconds. And if Cone of Cold hits 3 or more enemies, it resets the cooldown of Frozen Orb and Comet Storm. Now, this is very, very important because basically you can, we'll wait 10 seconds here and I'll show you. So we can Frozen Orb, Comet Storm, and then Cone of Cold on top of that. And now that since it hit 3+ targets, our Frozen Orb and our Comet Storm are off cooldown again, so we can cast them again. And that gives us a very strong opener. So very, very important to understand how Cone of Cold work. It doesn't look that strong at surface level, but it actually is a pretty strong ability. Next thing we're going to talk about is something called our Icicles. So we talked earlier, as you cast your Frostfire Bolt, you're building up these Icicle charges. And you can see that here in the top right. You see we have 4, and you get a maximum of 5 Icicles that can be stored. And as you build up your Icicles, you can funnel that into something called your Glacial Spike. You can see they kind of combine there, and it shot out like this giant ice shard that dealt a whole bunch of damage. Now, another core spell that I want to talk about here is going to be something called Flurry. Now, Flurry is extremely important. This is probably one of the most important spells that we're going to talk about here. So Flurry, you get 2 charges of it. It's on a 30-second cooldown, and this is going to apply something called Winter's Chill. And you can kind of see at the bottom of the tooltip here, Winter's Chill causes the target to take damage from your spells as if it were frozen. So this is very similar to kind of like your Cone of Cold. At surface level, it doesn't look like that strong of a spell, but it's actually pretty potent. So what we can do here, I'll just kind of show you what Flurry looks like. So we'll go up to this dummy, press Flurry, and it shoots out this sort of barrage of icicles. We'll press it again, and you see those icicles kind of go out there. Now what that did is that applied these stacks of something called Winter's Chill. So we're going to Flurry, and you can see it applied 2 stacks by itself of Winter's Chill. I can press it again, and it just refreshed those stacks. So it caps at 2 stacks. Again, Winter's Chill, basically each stack counts the next damage effect as if the target were frozen. Right, so that's where we get that huge damage modifier from it. So you can actually use your Flurry in sequence to beef up your Glacial Spike to make it hit harder. So typically you want to do is you want to cast a Glacial Spike, and as it's traveling, cast a Flurry before that, because the Flurry actually travels travels faster than the Glacial Spike, and you can use the Winter's Chill procs to beef up for a huge Glacial Spike. Now you have to be careful with that, because if you stand too close to the target, the Glacial Spike will hit before the Flurry. So you want to make sure that you're at least like 10 yards at minimum away, just to make sure that that Flurry lands and applies Winter Chill before your Glacial Spike does. But what we'll do is we'll build up here, and I'll kind of show you what this looks like. So we'll build up to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We can see there's no Winter's Chill. Let's go ahead and cast a Glacial Spike. And you can see it did like 2.5 million damage there. So now let's try this one more time and build up another Glacial Spike. And now we're going to start charging up Glacial Spike and then Flurry. And I didn't see exactly how much damage it did there. We'll do it one more time, pay a little bit more attention. So we'll cast Glacial Spike and Flurry. And see it did 5.5 million there. And that's at a base level, essentially the Shatter combo that Frost Mages use. Is you take advantage of your Flurry landing before your Glacial Spike. So we'll look at that in the rotation here in a bit, but just know, that's the Shatter combo. That's kind of how it works. Since we're on the topic of Glacial Spike, we also are taking a talent to Splitting Ice. And this is going to make our Glacial Spike also hit a second nearby target for 100% of its damage. And then same thing with your Ice Lance as well. This will hit a second target for 90% of their damage. So we're actually really strong. Frost Mage is really strong in like 2 to 3 target cleave due to Splitting Ice. We're actually one of the better specs of two target cleave where we kind of play a similar role to something like a Destruction Warlock with like Havoc and double Chaos Bolts. So just kind of FYI, just know that your Glacial Spike can cleave. Up next, I want to talk about just a couple minor cooldowns here. So I say minor. Your major cooldown here, Icy Veins. So let's go ahead and pull that up. So Icy Veins accelerates your spell casting for 30 seconds, gives you 20% haste. So this is just like a mini Lust, essentially. And you press it, right, for 30 seconds, and you basically can just cast extremely quickly, and you can get all these procs that happen. Now, one thing you'll notice is I did summon my Water Elemental as well when I pressed that, and you could actually use the Water Elemental's freeze effect as well if you want to proc freeze and benefit from that shatter effect, right? Just essentially makes a lot of your spells hit harder. Another spell I want to talk about here is our Blizzard, and I did miss this one earlier. Okay, so Blizzard, 12-second cooldown. This is going to be a spell in AoE scenarios that you just want to kind of keep on the ground. And Blizzard is important because this reduces the cooldown on your Frozen Orb. So pretty much every pool, you need to have a Frozen Orb up. And the way that you do that is by casting a Blizzard behind it. So we can Frozen Orb, and then now we can Blizzard. And each time it does damage, watch the cooldown on our Frozen Orb, how much it's taking down. So pretty much any time that Blizzard is off of cooldown in AoE, you're going to make sure that you're getting it up as quickly as you can, right? And you can see after one rotation of Blizzard, basically our Frozen Orb is ready to go again. So it's very, very important to get high uptime on your Blizzard. Okay, then last spell I think I'm going to talk about here is going to be our Ice Nova. So Ice Nova, just kind of read it out here, 25-second cooldown, causes a whirl of icy wind around the target, dealing X amount of frost damage, freezing them in place for 2 seconds. So basically our Ice Nova is going to be like a ranged Frost Nova for you so that you can apply that freeze effect. And you can use Frost Nova as well, like in front of a Comet Storm, right? So that you can proc that freeze effect and get a lot more critical strikes out of it. But the problem with that is you got to go into melee range to do that. So you can actually use your Ice Nova from range to freeze all the targets, and then you can follow that up with like a Blizzard or whatever. But typically you want to actually follow an Ice Nova with either Comet Storm, or you want to follow it with Glacial Spike in 99% of cases, not really ever a Blizzard. So a very typical opener that you can use, let's just kind of talk about the opener first. We're going to be pretty straightforward. In AoE, you're going to just simply, you're going to orb into a Comet, into Cone of Cold, and then send them again. But you only want to do that after casting your Icy Veins. So it looks something like this for your opener. That's a pretty decent AoE opener right there. Again, we popped Icy Veins into Orb, into Comet, into Cone of Cold, then these 2 spells again. Now in single target, it actually does change just a little bit. Typically what you'll do is you'll start to precast a Frostfire bolt before the boss is pulled, and then you will Flurry, Icy Veins, and then a Comet Storm. And the reason that you want to do that is because you want your Comet Storm to benefit from the Winter's Chill effect, right? So we can get that big shatter combo through our Comet Storm. And then from there, you can start to actually build up your icicles through Frostfire bolts. So your opener would look something like this. You will Frostfire bolt pre-pull, Flurry into an Icy Veins, and then into a Comet Storm. So that's going to be your single target opener right there. Now from there, things will kind of change, and I'm going to put on the screen right now your single target and your AOE priority. So this is going to be your single target priority that you're looking at here. So after you do your single target opener that we just talked about, your first step is going to be, it's going to be priority, right? So your main priority is to do your shatter combo, right? And that is to flurry and apply Winter's Chill before your Glacial Spike. So anytime Glacial Spike is ready and flurry is ready, go ahead and flurry before your Glacial Spike. Now, this next point here is going to be to apply your Winter's Chill with your flurry. And this is going to revolve a little bit more around Frostfire Bolt. So I didn't actually explain the shatter combo extremely well earlier, so let me go into a little bit more depth on that really quick. The way your shatter combo works is, we did say it takes advantage of travel times, but basically where that advantage is coming in at is by not using one of your Winter's Chill stacks. So let me just give you an example here with our Frostfire Bolt. So let's build up to a couple icicles here. So we're at 3+ icicles. So that's where this condition would come in, right? If you're at 3 or more icicles. So what you'll do is you can cast a Frostfire Bolt and you can queue up a flurry behind that. And this Frostfire Bolt will not consume one of the stacks of the Shatter or of the Winter Chill's Blessing, but it will still benefit from it. So you kind of can get 3 charges out of your Winter's Chill instead of 2. So I kind of show you right here with this Frostfire Bolt. We'll cast it and we'll flurry. And you can see we still have 2 stacks of our Winter's Chill, but we still shattered. We still got the shatter combo from our Frostfire Bolt. So that will also apply for Glacial Spike as well, right? So we'll Glacial Spike, we'll flurry right before it. And you can see that we got that Glacial combo, or we got that Winter's Chill free shatter combo. And we still have 2 stacks, excuse me, of our Winter's Chill. So that is a little bit more in depth of what that shatter combo actually is. So let's go ahead and pull this back up. So what this is doing is this is basically prepping our Winter's Chill for our next Glacial Spike that we're building. And we're able to take advantage of one of those Winter's Chills, and your 4th icicle will shatter. Your 5th icicle will shatter, and you'll still have 1 more remaining charge of Winter's Chill to use on your Glacial Spike. Because, right, this says if Winter's Chill is not active, then you flurry. Well, if you go to step 2 here, we would have had Winter's Chill active for this next Glacial Spike. So we'd be able to Glacial Spike without having to waste a flurry charge. So that's where step 2 kind of comes in, is you're kind of prepping your Glacial Spike and you're utilizing that free charge of Winter's Chill, and you're able to actually shatter 2 Frostfire Bolts and a Glacial Spike. And this is just kind of the prep of that. So that's the best that I can explain step 2 here. It's very confusing. That's kind of the breakdown behind it. Step 3, we're going to Comet Storm if Winter's Chill is active. So if you do have Comet Storm up and you do have a Winter Chill active, then you will Comet Storm. We're not running Ray of Frost. I don't know why I have that in there. I completely disregard that. Up next, we'll Glacial Spike, Frozen Orb. So, you know, you can Glacial Spike if there is no, if you don't have any charges of flurry, right? It's still fine to go ahead and Glacial Spike. Your next step is to Frozen Orb. And then a very big part here, and we didn't talk about this earlier, I should have, is Shifting Power. So Shifting Power, what this does is this reduces the cooldown on all of your spells. So just drag this. I don't know why this isn't on my bars. So we'll Icy Veins, and then we'll go ahead and go into a Shifting Power. And you can notice the cooldown on it is ticking faster. You see that Icy Veins is already a 3/4 through its cooldown, and that's because Shifting Power is taking some seconds off that cooldown. That's how Shifting Power works. So when any of your spells go on cooldown, or when the bulk majority of your spells go on cooldown, that's when you're going to Shifting Power. Always use it with Icy Veins. We want to get as much CDR on our Icy Veins as we possibly can. So that's that bullet point. And then up next, that's when we can use these Finger of Frost procs, and we will fill with Frostfire Bolt. So that's our single target priority. Let's go ahead and go into AOE. So our AOE priority is going to be pretty similar. So you would go through the opener like you normally would. And then from there, you're going to be using your Cone of Cold if our previous cast was Comet Storm, right? So Cone of Cold will reset the cooldown on our Comet Storm. We can also use Cone of Cold right on our opener to get resets on our Frozen Orb. But like we talked about earlier, the main resets that you're getting on your Frozen Orb is not going to be through Cone of Cold. The main reset that you're getting is actually going to be through your blizzard. Right, so step 6 down here, this is going to give you all those resets on your frozen orb right here in step 5. So we'll talk about that here in just a second. Step 2, we want to use our freeze from our elemental for glacial spikes or comet storm. So when we cast our icy veins, we got our water elemental that spawns, and you want to use that freeze effect, and you want to pair that with a glacial spike or comet storm, and you want to weave that in whenever you don't have a flurry charge. So if you can't apply Winter's Chill and Shatter, then that's where freeze kind of comes in. It's kind of like this buffer. So that's step 2, is utilize that freeze spell whenever you possibly can. Step 3 is going to be the same thing as freeze, right? But just do it with Ice Nova if Ice Nova is up. So you have multiple things that you can use to proc shatter combos in AoE, which is really nice. Ice Nova, freeze, use those whenever you can. Step 4, you're going to flurry if Winter's Chill is not active and the previous cast was a Glacial Spike. So same thing that we saw in the single target rotation. Remember, your Glacial Spike will cleave, so you do want to flurry to apply Winter's Chill and use that even in AoE scenarios. Up next, you'll Frozen Orb, and then you'll be Blizzarding behind that to get CDR into our Frozen Orb. And then from here, this is where you can kind of manage. I'm not going to really stress this too much since this is more of a beginner's guide. But you can play around like Death Chill stacks. You can play around excess fire stacks. You can play around excess frost stacks if you want as well. But that is getting a little bit into the weeds here. So for the purposes of this guide, I'm just going to cross those out because those don't, it's sort of like a min-max thing. So we'll just kind of cross those out. And then now this looks a little bit better. So your next step is to Comet Storm before your Cone of Cold, then get that reset with Cone of Cold. From here, you can Glacial Spike if nothing else is available, even if you don't have a Winter's Chill stack. And then if nothing else is available, you'll want to go ahead and Shifting Power so that you can get more CDR on like your Cone of Cold, on your Comet Storm, on your Frozen Orb, on your Icy Veins, Ice Nova, etc. Very important to keep this on cooldown, Shifting Power. And then from there, you'll go into your Fingers of Frost cast and then a Frostfire Bolt as your filler. So yeah, I know that was kind of like a lot of reading towards the end there, but I do like to try to explain a lot of these rotations instead of just throwing a list at you, like why we're doing certain things. Really, if you just kind of get the opener down, you understand the kind of how that shatter combo works, and really what you're doing, right, is you're playing around your flurry cooldown, your Winter's Chill stacks, and you're just trying to be as efficient as you possibly can with your shatter combos. You want to get as many shatter combos in as you possibly can. You want to make sure you're not wasting any of those Winter Chill stacks. Then yeah, from there, just taking advantage of as many cooldowns as you possibly can. So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Hopefully that at least gives you a decent understanding of how Frost Mage is played. We kind of went through the opener. We kind of went through some of the priorities. My best recommendation is just come out to a dummy, open up, that list that we had right there, and just play with the spec on dummies, and it'll eventually start to flow. And again, as long as you're very conscious of the order that you're pressing your abilities in and getting maximum value out of those big cooldown resets, out of those shatter combos, getting max value there, you will do a very high damage as a Frost Mage. Thank you guys for watching. See you in the next one.